Welcome to Money Mind. Wong and Stanley Leong with you. A lot has been discussed about gold, safe haven and all, but I don't think we have given as much coverage about silver and the value silver holds. So this is where we want to understand more about silver bullion. And for more, let's welcome CEO of Silver Bullion, Gregor Gregersen. Now, your company is, called Silver Bullion. Your company's name already suggests that you're focused more on silver than gold. Are we correct to say so?
Yes. We are quite unusual in the sense that about half of what we sell by value is silver, which in terms of amounts means that we're selling about 85 times more silver in terms of mass than gold. So yes, we are very silver heavy.
Why silver though? I mean, it's not as well understood, I suppose, as gold is.
Yes, there are essentially three reasons why I became enamored with silver. So first one is that silver traditionally is costed about 16 units of silver for every 1 unit of gold in nature. And traditionally, historically, that was a ratio, the price ratio. But nowadays, that ratio is up to 88 or so. So silver is very cheap compared to gold. Secondly, silver used to be it was used to back the US dollar along with gold. And so the US had huge reserves of silver. But by 1968, inflation and other things caused silver to become more valuable than the nominal value of that silver. And essentially people, they had to stop using silver for that backing. And what happened is that these huge reserves of silver were sold to industrial users. And, the electronic revolution, which followed in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000, and so on, they consumed most of that silver. Because the average keyboard has 1 or 2 grams of silver in it. That keyboard eventually ends up being thrown out in the trash. And so there's a lot less silver in the world today compared to 40, 50 years ago. So we're having something that's cheap, and we're having something with a lot less of it than there used to be. And then lastly, silver has a lot of industrial uses. It has a lot of medical uses. It is antibacterial. It's very important for solar panels. So there's a lot of uses for it. When you look at it, essentially, these are the reasons which make silver very appealing. I call it the forgotten metal in some ways.
Yeah, it does sound like it. I mean, it sounds so precious and so valuable and so, many different ways you could use silver. It's such a precious metal, but yet a lot of us just think it's,
But my personal experience was my mom telling me, if you buy gold, when you want to sell it, there's value. But if you buy silver and you sell it, there's no value. I don't know. That was my what my mom explained to me previously.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that one, Gregor?
That used to be very true. And in some ways we changed that because it depends which country you're in. When you're in the US, silver has played a very important role. And when I came back to Singapore and I realized I couldn't get any silver, I decided, okay, we need to start this market in Singapore. And then we sold about $1.4 billion worth of gold and silver in this market, and we're storing about $700 million of silver now in our facility. So we can very easily make liquidity for silver at very efficient prices. We're talking maybe 2% differences. So we pretty much eliminated that. If you go to our store in Millennia Walk, for example, you can sell back, say, $200,000, $300,000 worth of silver for us on the spot, no problem.
So do the silver come in like gold bars, like in gold bars, and to be stored in the safe in the banks and stuff?
So we build our own vault, which we actually had a vault since the last 8 years. We ran out of space once we reached about 500 tons of silver, and we are now building a very large new vault, which will become the largest capacity vault worldwide, actually, in Changi area. Yes, up to 15,000 tons of silver capacity.
Wow. Okay. So that's good news. It shows that there is a heightened interest now in the investing and purchase of silver as well as gold. But let's talk about what first started. What started you really in looking at investing in silver and gold bullion?
I was a senior data architect working for Commerzbank, which is a big German bank, in 2008 when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so I essentially saw the financial system almost coming to a halt being inside the banks and having spent most of my life in this area. And I realized that we are going to have a much bigger crisis coming because the reasons of this collapse based on too much leverage, too much debt, and too much interconnectivity between the banks. And so basically I said, well, how do you protect yourself? And the beauty of physical gold and silver is that you have no counterparty risk, meaning you can hold it yourself and it has intrinsic value. It's not dependent on somebody else being able to pay you. And that means that it's a good way to diversify your risk away from the financial system itself. So worst case scenario, you have some gold and silver, and no matter what happens, that's always going to be valuable. That's essentially why I wanted to go into this business.
And, you mentioned about, gold, the physical gold bars or silver that had to, that if you hold on to it, you have to find the physical space, the vaults, and we have to rent it. So why not invest in gold ETFs or exchange traded funds instead?
Yes, the problem with ETFs is that you are still within that same financial system. Most of our customers, for example, are from the United States, and they want to diversify their jurisdictional risk into another country. That's partly why Singapore is a good place, Singapore and Switzerland. And one of their big worries is that at some point in the future, there might be a currency crisis in the United States dollars, meaning the United States is printing so much debt that at such a fast pace that at some point people might no longer trust it and inflation is going to go up, which it is right now. We're talking about 8.6% inflation in the U.S. right now. And so the fear is that the U.S. will nationalize gold again, which is what they did back in 1933. And they would nationalize gold because if people no longer trust the currency, a government is essentially powerless, and traditionally what a government will have to do is create a new currency which is backed by something that people can trust. And that usually involves some form of gold and silver. And so the fear is, if it really comes to that, people want to own physical gold and silver as a form of systemic wealth protection, meaning that it's a system itself that we are so used to, it's failing. I want to be able to have something in a safe jurisdiction like Singapore under my name as my ultimate backup. And if you put it in a gold ETF in the US, you don't get that. And that's essentially why physical gold, has a place and silver.
So I would assume that Singapore has a very good reputation overseas as well, where it concerns people who want to diversify and place their wealth in different parts of the world.
Yes, and especially now with what is happening in Hong Kong and so on, there's really only Singapore and Switzerland left. And I've been a big advocate for Singapore for the last 15 years. And
right.
I've become a Singaporean citizen as well. So
right. All right, yeah, putting yourself where your mouth is, I suppose. But let's also talk about investing in bullion as compared to, say, those who may be interested in just buying lots of gold jewelry. As investment-grade precious metals, we understand are GST exempt in Singapore, but yet there are people who still prefer to buy jewelry than bullion. What are your thoughts on this? Are you hoping to change some mindsets here?
Well, it depends what the purpose is. If people buy jewelry because they like to show off a little bit or because they like the designs, and, more power to them. Same reason people are buying, expensive watches. They're not buying it to see the time. Typically, they're showing it because or they want to show it off. But, if you're really buying it as a form of investment, then yes, it makes a lot more sense to buy physical gold, bullion or silver as opposed to jewelry. But our main target really is to go towards people who are holding bonds or holding cash or holding equities, which are in other types of financial instruments, which are not going to do very well in a stagflationary environment where we're heading to. And where we're heading to, gold and silver traditionally is a very good place to be. And if I might just add this, gold, for example, has had an average return of 7.8% per year over the last 50 years or so. So most people don't realize that, but it's a steadily appreciating asset, especially when you have high inflation environments, which is what we're having.
Right. So that's gold. What about silver? How has it been hopefully appreciating as well in value?
Yes. It's also been appreciating. It's not been doing as well as gold. If I remember correctly, we're talking about 5% per year or so on average. But that means that silver is greatly undervalued. So you can look at it as a negative, or you can look at it, silver has quite a bit to catch up compared to gold. And that's where the gold and silver ratio comes in, where typically this ratio will move between, over the last 50 years or so, between 50 and 80. And what the ratio tells you is, it's basically saying how many ounces of silver do you need to buy 1 ounce of gold. And with that fluctuating between 50 and 80, it basically means that if it's low, you should be buying gold. If that ratio is high, you should be buying silver because it's cheap. And right now, I just looked it up before the call, and the ratio is at 88.8. And that means that silver really is very cheap, and between the two, silver is a better item to buy because it's expected to outperform gold over the short term.
Such an auspicious number, 88.8.
Now you mentioned building a state-of-the-art vault facility near Changi Airport earlier. It will be completed next year. So that is an expansion plan for you?
Correct. Our old vault, we literally ran out of
space
capacity because 2020 and 2021, the COVID period was extremely good for us. I mean, sales went up 400%, because people had time, and we realized that things can change, that a crisis can happen. So the demand for safe haven investments really went up, and that caused us to literally run out of space at a fast pace. And we got very lucky to find an ideal building for us in the Changi Business Park area. And this building is so ideal for us because it has 90 kilonewton floor loading. It essentially means we can put a lot of weight on it. It's 45 times stronger than a typical car park.
Wow.
So we can stack silver 12 meters high. It's something that's never been done anywhere in the world, as far as I'm aware. And we confirmed with a number of large news agencies that, as far as they're concerned, this will be by far the highest capacity vault anywhere, because we're combining high capacity logistical systems along with the vaulting side of things.
Right. How much more can you accommodate?
So the old vault in practice did about 450 tons of silver. The new vault can do up to 15,000 tons. And to give you an idea, that is more silver than is in the entire COMEX future system in the United States. Mm-hmm. The Silver Institute is estimating that there's about 60,000 tons of silver in vaults nowadays. So we can accommodate more than a quarter of all of the silver worldwide in this facility.
That's a huge facility that you're planning there, opening up in Changi to be completed by next year. Now, so who will actually be able to access and store their silver gold bars at the vault? Would it be customers of Silver Bullion?
So the facility is over 180,000 square foot. So we are planning to have a number of tenants in there. So we won't be the only one storing precious metals. But yes, we have Silver Bullion customers there. It is possible for people to come and see it. Silver Bullion starts with about $3,000 or so for 100 ounces worth. That's our smallest sort of parcel. And we do have a gold savings account, which allows you to buy, $50 worth of gold and silver. And compared to many other vaults like the Freeport, our design is a lot more open because from a security perspective, we have an onion sort of principle security system where the higher floors of the building are really meant to be semi-public areas, whereas the lower floors are where the higher security areas are. So that makes access to the building a lot easier. And the building will also have enough space to do events. We got permission from URA to have art auctions in the facility at some point. So we will also have a high-end watch workshops there in order to authenticate watches and allow for watches to be collateralized and other such features. So there are a lot of plans beyond just gold and silver. And because of the high capacity, we'll be able to store large amounts of rare earth metals as well.
Right. Gregor, one final question before we let you go, and that'll be about whether we should view precious metals, gold, silver, as long-term or short-term investments. What would you recommend?
So physical gold and silver is really a wealth insurance. It is something that you buy for the long term, and it sometimes generationally. It makes sure that you have a backup when other things go bad. So it's something that you should buy and you should keep for a long period of time. If you're planning to buy something today and sell it in 2 weeks' time, don't buy the physical. Because when you buy the physical, you have some more cost involved. You're better off buying paper, gold, or silver.
That's right. Yeah, very practical advice there. Gregor, thank you so much for educating us about Silver Bullion, of which you are the CEO of. And for our listeners, they can visit your website at silverbullion, bullion.com.sg. Gregor Gregersen is CEO of Silver Bullion, joining us for Money Mind today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.